You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
We are committed to the pharmacy owner's success. PrimeRx believes in empowering pharmacies with innovative solutions to thrive in today's competitive landscape. We look forward to working with pharmacy owners and sharing how our solutions can contribute to their sustained profitability and growth. Connect with us on the web by going to PrimeRx.io. That's PrimeRx.io.
Hey there, this is Todd Urey, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, bringing you another Pharmacy Podcast Tech Trends from the team at PrimeRx. And today is a necessary topic. It's something that we definitely want more information on. It's I always want to demystify things, and I like having people in position to bring us information that we can rely on and go back to as business owners, as pharmacy owners, and be like, okay, this is good. At least it gets the latest in the subject. And the subject is the tariffs, and how is a tariff going to impact all of us? How's it going to impact the independent community pharmacy and our wholesaler relationships and technology? So today it's tariffs, trade, and turbulence, navigating the impact on pharmacy. And my guest is a returning Pharmacy Podcast Network guest, David Kirkus. He's Vice President of Market at PrimeRx. David, it is great to have you back.
Thanks, Todd. Great to be back with you again.
All right. So new developments surrounding pharmaceutical tariffs. We have news that is, it's fresh. And if you haven't seen it, just on the 19th of the month on Pharma Voice, it's the Pharma Voice publishes, and it's titled "Tracking a Moving Target: Drug Makers Break for Looming Tariff Impact." And with policies in flux, companies seek to be proactive and understand their supply chain. This is a great article. We're going to have this in the show notes. We're going to have a link to this article in the show notes, and definitely take a read to that. But I want to shift it over to you first, David, to kind of just let's get some things out of the way. Let's slow down for a second. Like I said, I like to demystify. So right out of the gate, let's get a brief overview of the current state of pharmaceutical tariffs from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah, it seems to be a moving target over the last few weeks, with a lot of things in flux and uncertainty. I think for everybody potentially impacted by pharmaceutical tariffs is top of mind right now. And how do we react in an uncertain time is going to be really critical over the next several months for pharmacies and everyone else impacted across the entire drug chain in supply chain in the U.S. So the proposed tariffs would impact imported finished drugs or active pharmaceutical ingredients. This comes from Commerce Department insights citing national security concerns around the excessive reliance we have in the U.S. on foreign-produced pharmaceuticals. About 90% of generic drugs are manufactured abroad, primarily in India and China. And that reliance, comes with exposure. It makes our supply chain more fragile than we'd like it to be, and exposed to global disruptions potentially. So let's keep in mind that these tariffs have been floated as an idea. It's a policy proposal. There's no timeline. There's really no framework and structure that we can use to guide us at this current point. So we'll have to continue to monitor how the administration moves forward over the next several weeks. But subsequent to the announcement of proposed tariffs, we also had on May 12th a new executive order issued that establishes most favored nation pricing and requires the U.S. to pay no more than the lowest price paid by peer nations for the same drugs. So a lot of really sort of blunt macroeconomic tools that the administration is proposing, aimed primarily at bringing production back to the U.S. and then also lowering drug costs. I think these are very well-intended policy proposals, but potentially very destabilizing in the short term. I think before we move to, I think it's also important to note that drug pricing, it always mystifies me how much attention that drug pricing commands from both politicians and media sources. Prescription drugs account for less than 10% of the total U.S. healthcare spending and provide, life-saving treatments. They decrease the overall cost of healthcare. There's plenty of evidence that more utilization of drugs, better adherence to medications that patients are on, will further decrease the overall cost of healthcare. So I think it's a bit unfortunate that pharmaceutical pricing commands as much attention as it does. But because it does, we are all affected by these policy decisions. And as always, pharmacy tends to find itself in the middle and exposed in a variety of different directions.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We could start slicing the pie around the impact of tariffs on different portions of the ecosystem. And not only do companies have to know where the products are coming from, but they also have to determine that country of origin for the ingredients, which is not always straightforward. And I think of where the API was manufactured, but it can shift to that finished dose if there's a substantial transformation, which can occur when products contain multiple APIs. And that was mentioned in the Pharma Voice article, and it comes down to that supply chain disruption. So how are tariffs, how do they affect the importing of active pharmaceutical ingredients and in those finished drugs?
Well, I think so. Tariffs in the pharmaceutical industry is new, right? This is not traditionally the way that that the United States treats pharmaceutical manufacturers. So I think we have a couple of things we can look at is the way that tariffs have impacted other industries where they have been imposed. And what you see in the short term is typically increased pricing and supply disruption. And I don't see how we would avoid either of those in a world where, immediate tariffs of significant amounts are imposed on pharmaceutical ingredients and finished products. The reason is very simple. It's the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry exists to produce drugs and sell them profitably wherever they're selling them. And if their costs increase, they are going to pass those costs on and remain profitable, producing the pharmaceuticals that they're producing one way or the other. And if that means passing on the cost, that's going to lead to a rise in costs for those drugs in the U.S. in the short term. The other potential consequence is rationalization of production lines, where lower margin products, pharmaceutical manufacturers in India, for instance, are not going to be thinking about the long-term impact on supply and availability in the U.S. They're thinking about which product lines that my teams are producing are generating the most profit for my company. And when those profits are impacted, they will very easily stop producing drugs and shift production to others where they can better manage the financial impacts to their own businesses. So think all the way down to the pharmacy counter, what do those impacts look like? I think it's a combination of generics in particularly having a lot of volatility around pricing.
Yep.
And further enhanced by disruptions to supply, making it more difficult to find the drugs that pharmacies need, particularly if they're shopping in a single source.
Yeah, I also think, so we want, based on these tariffs, the administration is saying, hey, we want more production happening here at home. We want it to be from the United States. And that's great. But to stand up a manufacturing plant in the United States, you do need FDA approval. And I'm wondering, will the FDA expedite and start concentrating on getting more authorization in place for manufacturers that are like bringing things back? I think of my own, my own community of southwestern Pennsylvania, and we have a rich source of generic creation right here in southwestern Pennsylvania, with several industrial parks that have pharmaceutical generic manufacturers, in them, and one of them that was close in Canonsburg, which moved overseas, and that was 7 to 9 years ago. And I'm wondering, does this create a resurgence where they come back and begin manufacturing again? Because they if you think of the employee access of a entire environment, and of the south western Pennsylvania region, the Pittsburgh region has this huge source of employees that could really jump in immediately. But what do you think of those other stipulations that we're going to have to expedite in order to in order to start manufacturing here at home?
Yeah, it's certainly not something that we can ramp up and scale to the current level of international production over months. It's certainly a years long process to move an entire industry from a foreign source to a U.S. based source. I think, again, the intention is very aspirational and certainly long term the right thing to do for the U.S. economy and the U.S. healthcare system as a whole. I just think that that gap between where we are now and where we would like to be is very difficult to cross. It's a very complex industry, and it's going to be resisted from a lot of different avenues. I think you're going to see litigation slowing processes and potentially turning this into something that could linger for some time before we arrive at that sort of nirvana state where the U.S. is reliant on itself to supply pharmaceuticals. So yeah, I think going back to where I started, I think uncertainty is going to be the most. I think we are going to live in a time of uncertainty for the drug supply chain until there's some clarity around. Is tariffs a tool that the administration is proposing to generate negotiation to land somewhere, a little bit softer landing somewhere in the short term, that then combines with either tax incentives or other incentives that are used to bring more production onto the U.S. shore? But I certainly, hope that we don't end up in a position where pharmacies continue to struggle, continue to fight challenges on reimbursement and availability of products. And, we're already seeing so many pharmacies struggling today to just keep their head above water. I don't see a lot of good here in the short term, unfortunately. I think it makes it even more important than ever for pharmacies to optimize their cost of goods. It's the one lever left that pharmacies really have any control over at all. And so, yeah, we'll talk a bit in a moment, I hope, about what PrimeRx is doing to help.
Absolutely. The next subject that I want to make sure listeners get some information from, because this is going to come up in their minds as they're listening, is the shortages that this could create around chemotherapy drugs and pain relievers and antibiotics, ADHD medications. Those are one of the top 7 that are listed right now that are going through some shortage issues. 300 plus NDCs are on the shortage list. So when I think of the tariff issue and impacts, it's going to be impacting our shortage issues too. So definitely give us your thoughts on shortages and accessibility.
Absolutely agree. Yes. Like I mentioned earlier, the pharmaceutical manufacturers are not going to continue to produce drugs just for the benefit of the U.S. healthcare system. It has to be financially rewarding for them to continue to produce those drugs. And when they're not, then the easiest thing for them to do is to shut down production lines and move those production lines to more profitable drugs. That is, in large part, what drives drug shortages in the environment we already live in without tariffs. So tariffs, essentially raising the cost of production for pharmaceutical manufacturers in other countries is going to have to lead to them shifting those costs or discontinuing those product lines. And when a major manufacturer or multiple major manufacturers of some of the top dispensed medications in the U.S. stop producing those drugs, we don't have an easy place to go to backfill that supply. So I do think that, unfortunately, drug shortages will continue to remain at least at the level they're at now. And if tariffs are implemented at the rate proposed, then they could potentially become even much more of a problem.
Agreed. So there's policy and regulations that we're going to be waiting on to really gel, and having to wait on something, having to wait on PBM reform, or having to sit around and wait for policy to kind of really become something beyond the hyperboil that could be on either side of the argument of good tariffs, bad tariffs, things that we cannot control, David. Goodness gracious, we can't control that. But I love this speculation. I love the insights, because it's butted up against data and things that we have to really dig down into for our pharmacy owner listeners. But we do have control over something, and that's next. So let's shift gears. We're talking about the tariffs and the tariffs' impact on my pharmacy business, my impact on my accessibility for my patients to the medication, on the impact on pricing, profitability. Obviously, we can control some things through market, and that was the reason that you came on the show originally in the first of the year, beginning of 2025, and now we have more and more of our pharmacy owners engaging. You have transactions to show that there is, in fact, an impact on savings and on monthly savings. So let's shift that gear and talk about what pharmacy owners can do right now that they are in control of through the market system.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I want our pharmacy owners and operators to just think about the fact that within the world of PBM-dominated reimbursement for pharmaceuticals, pharmacy owners don't have the ability to shift costs anywhere. Right. Your reimbursement is controlled by the terms of an agreement you have with a PBM. When prices come down, reimbursement comes down. It happens rather quickly, and you're making the same margin percentage on a smaller number, and your profitability declines slightly as price comes down. On the other end, PBMs have been notoriously slow to update reimbursement rates when prices rise, and this leaves pharmacies exposed while their prices go up, and they're still being paid based on outdated price benchmarks. So really, from my standpoint, the most important thing that pharmacy operators can control is your cost of goods. It's the most immediate, actionable lever that you have. The era of single supplier loyalty really has to come to an end. Most pharmacies buy most of their drugs from a single source, and that completely eliminates competition from driving prices in their favor. Competition does drive savings. Diversification is really the only way to stay agile while you're facing drug shortages or while price volatility is impacting your business. We see pharmacies today using PrimeRx Market. We've got 50 vetted wholesalers in one place that you can shop across. Those wholesalers, they come onto our marketplace, and they have to compete on price, and they have to compete on availability. And these are the two biggest factors facing pharmacies in an uncertain time with looming tariffs, that you need to be in the driver's seat. You have to control your own destiny and not be reliant on macroeconomic changes that you can't control. Pharmacies today are saving tens of thousands of dollars a year. Literally, we have pharmacies saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on their cost of goods just by shifting a portion of their purchasing to a more competitive source. And I think, today it's time to adapt to doing the things that we've always done in pharmacy the way we've always done them. It just is not working anymore. The pharmacy that's going to continue to survive and thrive in this uncertain marketplace that we operate in is the one that adapts in real time, drug by drug. Adaptability is the way to control margin. And we're helping pharmacies adapt and survive at PrimeRx.
If you're listening, I just want you to pay attention. There are links in your show notes, but if you just want to type this in, if you're in front of your desktop, just type in primerx.io/market. Once again, that's primerx.io/market. If you are driving or doing something, don't worry. The link will be in the show notes. And David, what's actionable is that means they can do this today. They can set up an account. They can register under 10 minutes. It's easy to start making some comparisons, and tell them about the whopping cost of what this costs them too.
Yeah, it will cost you an enormous amount of $0 to join the PrimeRx marketplace. It is free to our pharmacy buyers, and absolutely provides immediate access to, like I said, almost 50 wholesalers, full line wholesalers, brands, generics, OTCs, controlled substances, medical devices, you name it. Most of the products that a pharmacy needs, either behind the counter or over the counter, you're going to find on the market, and you're going to find it competitively priced, and you're going to find it in good supply from well-known, trusted wholesalers.
David, I want to just say thank you on behalf of our listeners and myself, bringing us content that is really not only updating and demystifying what is tariffs, how are tariffs going to impact us, but giving us another solution of another option of how to save some money so that we can be profitable and not just surviving, but thriving as pharmacies. And it's harder than ever to do so, but having tools like this is pretty important. So thank you so much for being part of another podcast. I don't know, you're going to come back for the triple hit?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm happy to talk pharmacy with you anytime, Todd.
Well, I love it. You were listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network's coverage of trends in pharmacy with PrimeRx. They've been a great resource partner in really driving quality knowledge with the Pharmacy Podcast Tech Trends, prescribing knowledge and dispensing wisdom in every episode. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, anything that you have for preface, and take a look at primerx.io/podcasts for the entire library. Once again, that's primerx.io/podcasts. And David, we will talk with you next time.
Thanks, Todd.